There's been a lot of discourse online about when My Little Pony Friendship is Magic falls off, or even if it falls off. You've probably heard these arguments before. The show pokes massive holes in its world building just so that Hasbro can create new marketable toys. The main characters act more out of character and become flanderized over time. The show starts pandering too much to its cringy adult fan base in the later seasons and forgets about what made it work in the first place. While critics disagree about what specifically causes the show's writing to go downhill, there's one thing that everyone seems to agree on. The quality of the animation only gets better with each passing season, right? Wrong. Completely wrong. I'm here today to make the argument that the quality of the character animation for My Little Pony Friendship is Magic peaks all the way back in Season 1. Out of all 9 seasons of the show, the animation for the first season is the funniest, it's the cutest, and it's even the most creative. Let me show you what I mean. In this shot from Season 1, Rainbow Dash is trying to look cool and disinterested, and the animators pull out all the stops. The lean against the table, the crossed hooves, the way that she constantly looks away and flicks her hair, it's all very cute, funny, and creative. You can tell a lot of thought was put into the animation. In contrast, take this scene from Season 9, where Rarity is trying to look cool and disinterested herself. You can see that the animation is more fluid than in the previous clip, and the characters display a wider range of motion in their faces and their bodies. However, it's just not as charming or effective as the previous clip we looked at. The problem is that Rarity doesn't feel like a pony here. She stands on her hind legs, she emotes with her front hooves, and her mouth is clearly not attached to her muzzle. Additionally, for a character who's supposed to be feigning disinterest, she's overly animated and moving way too much. Despite the higher budget, the show looks worse than it did before. In Season 1, ponies mostly keep their front hooves planted on the ground. They pick stuff up with their mouths, and they're more physical in using their heads and bodies to interact with each other. As the show goes along, the characters become more and more anthropomorphized, gesticulating with their arms, picking stuff up with their hooves, and awkwardly contorting their bodies to act more human. They don't really feel like ponies anymore. I think that this discrepancy is likely due to changes in the show's production crew over the years. The original showrunner for Friendship is Magic, Lauren Faust, was very strict about the way that ponies behaved. In an interview with Equestria Daily back in 2011, she spoke about how she pushed the staff to create a world which was made for horses. In her words, "If we needed cameras, I wanted those cameras to be relatively workable to a creature with no fingers. Don't draw a hoof unnaturally and awkwardly wrapped around an umbrella because you don't feel like thinking about it a little more." She goes on to clarify that her approach wasn't strict, and that the rules could be bent a little when the narrative called for it. Still, this attention to detail heavily influenced the animation for the early seasons of the show. For instance, have you ever noticed how rarely chairs appear in Season 1? When Twilight is reading her books, she's typically depicted as either comfortably laying down on the ground like in Episode 4, or as standing and reading from a lectern like in Episode 5. In many scenes where characters are eating, they're shown to just stand at the table. Their meals are also frequently horse-themed, being a mix of grass, oats, or flowers. And in scenes where crowds are watching a show, they're either standing up in the crowd or they're sitting with all 4 hooves on the ground. Even when Twilight straps Pinky into a monitoring machine in the episode Feeling Pinky Keen, care was put into making sure that the machine looked comfortable for a horse to rest in. However, in the later seasons, these details go out the window. We see ponies awkwardly sitting on bar stools that clearly weren't made for them. We see fingers on oven mitts. We see umbrellas with handles, and chairs are everywhere. The world is clearly no longer designed with ponies in mind. The worst part is that the characters stop even acting like ponies. In Season 1, ponies pick stuff up with their mouths all the time. Even unicorns, who have access to magical telekinesis, don't shy away from biting down on things. This is really cute and often pretty funny, such as in this scene from the Season 1 episode, Green Isn't Your Color. You can't deny the fact that this scene is both funnier and cuter on account of the fact that the makeup artist holds the brush in her mouth. However, as the seasons go on, the characters start picking stuff up with their mouths less and less. For instance, Pegasus wings start being treated more and more like hands. Worse, ponies even start magically picking stuff up with their front hooves all the time. Even the unicorns, who have telekinesis, fall into this trap. And it's not just the way that ponies interact with the world that gets worse and worse over time, but also the way they interact with each other. In Season 1, characters got each other's attention by bumping their flanks into each other. In later seasons, they resort to tapping each other on the shoulders with their hands. I mean, hooves. In Season 2, Episode 5, Rarity shows affection for her little sister by nuzzling her in much the same way a real horse would nuzzle a foal, craning her neck around Sweetie Belle's head. This is adorable. However, in Season 7, Episode 6, Rarity shows affection for her little sister by awkwardly rearing up on her hind legs and hugging her with both arms, and it looks distractingly uncomfortable. In general, ponies in the first season tend to keep their front hooves planted firmly on the ground, which results in the animators having to get more creative in order to have the characters express themselves. For instance, take this scene from the episode Sonic Rainboom, where Rarity pokes Twilight Sparkle with her horn to get her attention. This is literally the only moment in the entire series where we see a unicorn physically poke another pony with their horn, and it's very cute and very funny. Just look at how offended Twilight looks in this moment. Despite how limited the animation is, it's remarkably expressive. There are other great moments in the same scene, too. For instance, I like how Pinkie picks up this book with her teeth and tosses it at Twilight. I like how Rarity slams her rear into Twilight and pushes her over. I even like how Pinkie Pie rears up on her hind legs and kicks her front hooves in the air when she's excited. This is a behavior called rearing that real horses do, and it happens all the time in Season 1. Tangentially related to the animation, I'd like to call attention to the fact that Season 1 has some really high quality cinematography. For instance, I love this shot from the premiere where we cut from Fluttershy hiding behind her hair to a POV shot from Fluttershy's perspective. I also love this shot from Episode 3 where Rainbow Dash is trying to bribe Twilight with favors in exchange for a gala ticket, and when Twilight accuses Dash of trying to kiss up to her, we get a shot of Dash framed with the sun behind her head like a halo as she plays dumb. I even really like this moment from episode 14, where Rarity is forced to endure public humiliation after putting on the worst fashion show ever. We get this overhead shot of her walking down the runway, emphasizing how small she feels and how she's surrounded on all sides. I just feel like these sort of interesting directing choices are way more common in the early seasons of the show, as the later seasons become more flat and literal with the way that scenes are presented. Now, you may be wondering, why does anything I've discussed so far matter? Is it really that big of a deal that Rarity forgot how to properly nuzzle her sister? Yes it is. It undermines the compelling fantasy setting that was established in Season 1. The world of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic is rich and immersive in the first season, filled with details that capture the imagination of its viewers. When people think about world building, they tend to only think about the lore and politics of a world, but there's more to it than that. The most memorable fictional worlds often have original architecture, original fashion, and original landscapes. Like, look at these screenshots. Even though there aren't any recognizable characters in them, it's easy to identify immediately that these all come from the world of Dragon Ball. This is what it means to be iconic. Everything in this setting is dripping with originality. And you know what else is iconic? The world of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. The architecture is rich and varied, from the towering golden spirals of Canterlot to the Roman-inspired Pegasus City of Cloudsdale. Even the rural streets of Ponyville are very distinct in their design. Seriously, have you ever really noticed how interesting the architecture here looks compared to the standard medieval Europe slop that plagues most high fantasy shows? The thatched straw roofs, the greenery and all of the hearts everywhere, these design elements all serve the purpose of creating a cozy atmosphere that draws the viewer in. Ponyville is designed with a small town vibe that makes the viewer forget about the cruel modernity and social alienation of the real world. Look at how beautiful the Golden Oak Library is. The exterior is so nice and pretty, with all of these natural-looking, soft rounded edges and warm shades of brown and green. Stepping inside, the interior looks just as good. This right here is peak cottagecore aesthetic. One can easily imagine Twilight spending many a night cozied up under her blankets and gazing at the stars through her bedside telescope. And you know what the showrunners did? They blew it all up. Why? Why would they do this? Why can't Twilight Sparkle just have her cozy little treehouse? From Season 5 onwards, she's cursed to live in this ugly, gigantic crystal castle that sticks out like a Thor-summoned Ponyville, and now she's gonna be just as miserable as I am. The interiors are massive and empty. Gone are the wooden floors, replaced with cold stone tiles. Gone are the soft browns and warm pinks, and in their place are depressing shades of blue and purple. I hate it. The worst part is, this castle serves as the central base of operations for the main characters from Season 5 onwards. In Season 1, you never knew whether an episode would open with a scene set in the library, or at Fluttershy's cottage, or at Sugar Cube Corner, or even at the Ponyville Spa. In the later seasons, though, more than half the episodes start in this depressing meeting room. The vibes are completely ruined. I haven't even talked about the way that the writing for the show changes. First, let me establish just how fantastic the written world building in Season 1 is. Right from the beginning, Friendship is Magic sets itself apart from other fantasy settings not only through its iconic visual aesthetic, but also in how it builds out the culture and traditions of its resident ponies. For instance, let's take a look at the 3 holidays that appear in Season 1. First, there's the Summer Sun Celebration that appears in Episode 1, where the ponies give thanks to their ruler and goddess Celestia, who uses her magic to guide the sun across the sky. Secondly, there's the Running of the Leaves, where the town of Ponyville comes together in autumn to participate in a marathon, with the stampede knocking the leaves from all of the trees to prepare for the coming winter. Lastly, there's the cultural event of Winter Wrap-Up, where the residents of Ponyville work together as a community to wrap up the season of winter. They guide the southern birds back from their migration, they clear up the winter clouds, they wake up the hibernating animals, and they plant that year's crops, including not only food, but also wild plant life like trees and flowers. All 3 of these holidays have something in common. They all reinforce the idea of ponies being the stewards of nature, which is, in my opinion, one of the most iconic world-building elements of the first season. You see, in the land of Equestria, there's really no such thing as nature, at least not in the sense that the term is used in real life. Ponies create the weather, they care for all of the plants and animals, and they even move the sun and moon across the sky. The whole ecosystem of Equestria is artificially created by its inhabitants. However, this all takes a lot of work, which is why they have annual cultural festivals to facilitate the passing of the seasons. In Winter Wrap-Up, we see the ponies divide into teams and work together to change the season from winter to spring in one big communal event. This tradition serves the narrative purpose of establishing the small-town vibes of Ponyville, creating a sense that this is a tight-knit community where everyone knows each other. This is also what makes the Winter Wrap-Up episodes so compelling to watch. Our POV character is Twilight Sparkle, a unicorn who grew up in the big, stuffy city of Canterlot, where the seasons are changed by magic. She feels like an outsider in Ponyville, and she desperately wants to participate in their traditions and become a proper member of their community. It's a compelling, character-driven story that weaves in its many world-building details seamlessly, without any need for clunky exposition. While My Little Pony had already been picking up steam in the bowels of 4chan for some time, the airing of this episode was a turning point where many people stopped watching ironically and started to become true fans. Because, ultimately, we're all jealous of Twilight Sparkle here. We're all tired of the real world, with its social alienation and its unpredictable weather and its competing religions and its taxes. The small-town vibes of Ponyville, with its rich cultural traditions and tight-knit community, is incredibly appealing, and it's one of the reasons that this show garnered such a large cult following to begin with. And yet, nearly every time I see a YouTube retrospective about Season 1 of this show, the reviewer doesn't mention pony culture at all. Did you know that Friendship is Magic is actually the first generation of MLP that bothered to give a narrative explanation for cutie marks? In previous generations, ponies were just born with these tattoos on their flanks, and they didn't really mean anything. In Gen 4, however, this was changed such that ponies earned a cutie mark as part of growing up, and that the marks were representative of a pony's destiny. Each cutie mark is different, and they're often steeped in metaphor. For instance, Fluttershy's cutie mark of 3 butterflies represents her connection to animals, but it also represents how she's gentle and delicate. Rainbow Dash's lightning bolt cutie mark represents her talent for speed and athletics, but it also represents her loud, attention-grabbing personality. Even Applejack's cutie mark, which is just some apples, has more to it than just representing her talent for farming. In a flashback, we see that Applejack earned her cutie mark when she realized just how much her family meant to her, and thus the 3 apples are also symbolic of how much she cares for her 3 living family members. The moment where a pony earns their cutie mark is always preceded by some sort of epiphany, a revelation where the pony realizes what their talents are and how they want to spend the rest of their life. There's a sort of spiritual, religious element to the way that cutie marks are treated in pony society, particularly in Season 1. As a viewer, it's engaging to examine each cutie mark we see in the show and to guess at what it could mean and how it was acquired. This world-building element does a lot to enrich the culture of Equestria and its ponies. Ponies even have quinceañeras, which are an allegory for the real-world Latin American tradition of quinceañeras, parties which are held to celebrate the moment when a girl becomes a woman. I hate when I see reviewers who take these things for granted, who seem to have forgotten how fascinating the episode Call of the Cutie really is on a first-time viewing. The showrunners for My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, particularly its original creator Lauren Faust, worked tirelessly to construct this world and to make it feel like an original, authentic fantasy setting. None of the previous iterations of the My Little Pony franchise came close to this level of originality and detail. Unfortunately, Lauren Faust left the show's production very early into Season 2, citing creative differences. Afterwards, it didn't take long for the show to undermine everything she'd built by dumbing down pony society and simplifying their cultural traditions. Cutie marks lose their spiritual importance, and earning them is reduced from a profound journey of self-discovery to a soulless process of foals simply trying a bunch of stuff until they find something that they're good at. In Season 1, every pony's story of how they earned their cutie mark was a unique journey that ended with an epiphany where they came to understand their purpose in life.
They're all about finding who you really are and boring stuff like that.
In Season 7, however, ponies are earning their cutie marks by going to a special cutie mark summer camp where they just try a bunch of different things until they stumble into their special talent. The whole process has become industrialized, and consequently, it's lost all of its charm and appeal. The unique holidays and festivals established in Season 1 are also quickly abandoned in favor of simple one-to-one allegories for human holidays. In Season 2, there are once again 3 episodes which depict a holiday. First, there's Nightmare Night, which is literally just Halloween. Secondly, there's Hearth's Warming, which is literally just Christmas. Lastly, there's Hearts and Hooves Day, which is literally just Valentine's Day. Gone are all of the original cultural traditions of Equestria, and in their place are lousy reminders of the real world. Across the show's runtime, we see a total of 2 Summer Sun celebrations, 1 Winter Wrap-Up, 1 Running of the Leaves, 2 Nightmare Nights, 5 Hearth's Warmings, and 2 Hearts and Hooves Days. That's 4 episodes dedicated to MLP original holidays, and 9 episodes dedicated to generic real-world allegories, and that really sucks. Even worse, the show seems to completely forget about the idea that the ponies are stewards of nature. While they remember the fact that Pegasi are responsible for controlling the weather, the show completely forgets about the lore that the wild animals and plants are also managed by the ponies. I want you to ask yourself, what's Fluttershy's job? What does she do for a living? If you answer that she's a veterinarian, you're wrong. She doesn't just take care of pets, she takes care of wild animals. She helps them gather meals, she aids in preparing their nests, she settles their disputes, and much more. There is no such thing as nature in the world of My Little Pony. The entire ecosphere is already carefully managed by ponies in order to make life comfortable for wild animals. So, imagine my surprise when I first watched the Season 7 episode, Fluttershy Leans In. It's a poorly written episode with stilted dialogue, no humor, and an overly predictable plot with no twists, but the worst part of all is that its premise doesn't even make any sense. Fluttershy decides, for some reason, that she wants to undertake a construction project to create an animal sanctuary in Ponyville so that the local wildlife can live safer and more comfortable lives. The problem with this, of course, is that the entirety of nature is already kind of an animal sanctuary, something that nobody in the episode ever seems to realize. They speak of the natural world like it's wild and dangerous, when Season 1 establishes that the ponies already micromanage everything. Another thing that pisses me off about this episode is that it's the first time we see a giraffe, and it's treated like a wild animal. In Lauren Faust's original vision for the series, all large, hooved animals are sentient. In Season 1, we see sentient ponies, donkeys, cows, zebras, and buffalo. By this logic, one would expect giraffes to also be sentient, but they aren't for some reason. Maybe this shouldn't bother me so much, but I mean, just look at this thing. I mean, this thing looks like it should be able to talk, right? The introduction of the animal sanctuary also degrades the series in another way. It continues the trend of making everything more extravagant over time. Just like how the Golden Oak Library was replaced by the ugly and imposing Crystal Castle, now Fluttershy's cozy little cottage gets to take a back seat to her fancy schmancy animal sanctuary. The later seasons have a problem where they conflate the idea of being bigger with being better. Like, in Season 8, they introduced this school of friendship which is constructed on the outskirts of Ponyville, and like the Crystal Castle, it's incredibly extravagant, fancy, and feels completely out of place. Am I the only one who sees what's happening here? They are gentrifying Ponyville. Our once small, tight-knit community of ponies is being overrun by rich, snobby tourists with no respect for the local culture. At this point, the show has lost all its charm. There's no longer any sense of community, no unique cultural traditions, and the ponies don't even behave like ponies anymore. I think that these trends are really hard for most of the pony analysis channels on YouTube to recognize because those channels mostly adhere to the format of covering the series episode by episode. It's already difficult enough to look at the long-term consequences of a bad episode, but then you also have to take into consideration that even good episodes can serve to degrade the setting in their own subtle, insidious ways. To explain what I mean, let me tell you about one of my favorite episodes of the show, Season 3, Episode 6, Sleepless in Ponyville. In it, Scootaloo goes on a camping trip with her two best friends, their sisters, and Rainbow Dash, and we get a touching story about found family and facing your fears. This episode has a wonderfully written and heartwarming story, lots of funny jokes, fantastic voice acting, great background art, and it makes brilliant progress on Scootaloo's character arc. However, it does have one problem. The character animation is worse than in every prior episode, to the point where it's kind of distracting. Let me show you what I mean. I hate how Scootaloo stands up and puts her arm around Sweetie Belle. I hate how Sweetie Belle shrugs. I hate how Sweetie Belle rubs her hooves together. I hate how Scootaloo gesticulates with her front hooves. I hate how Scootaloo crosses her legs when she lays on her back. I actually like how Applejack and Applebloom set up the tent by unrolling it and putting the stakes down with their mouths, and then stomping the stakes with their hooves. I hate how Applebloom poses here. I hate how all of the characters sit weird. I hate how Rainbow Dash nudges Scootaloo with her elbow and how Scootaloo shrugs afterwards, and how Rainbow Dash ruffles her hair. I hate how Rarity brings the teacup to her mouth with her front hooves instead of leaning forward or simply using telekinesis to levitate it. I hate how the characters sit weird. I hate how the fillies hug each other. I hate how Rainbow Dash poses on top of the flagpole. I hate how Rarity cups her little sister's cheek with her hoof instead of nuzzling her with her head. I hate how Applejack contorts her body to awkwardly pat Applebloom's head. I hate everything Scootaloo does in this moment. I hate Scootaloo's pose when she's trying to act cool. I hate how Rainbow Dash yawns. I hate when Rarity pats her sister's head. I hate when Scootaloo pats the back of her own head. I hate how Scootaloo rears up on her hind legs when scared. I hate how Applejack crosses her arms when shivering, and also how she sits weird. I hate how Applejack and Rarity hug their sisters. I hate how Scootaloo uses her arms when telling a campfire story. I hate how Rainbow Dash uses her arms when telling a campfire story. I hate how Applejack folds her arms here, and how far are we into this episode? Only about halfway? I think I've made my point. One of the best scripts in the entire show is wasted by being used up on an episode with some of the worst character animation in the series. The truth of the matter is that the show's quality control kind of went out the window when its original creator, Lauren Faust, left the team early into the development for Season 2. You see, she didn't just oversee the writing, Faust was also responsible for giving her stamp of approval to every step of the production process, including animation storyboards. I can only imagine how much better Sleepless in Ponyville would have looked if she were still around when the episode was made. I can still appreciate that we ended up getting a cute shot of Rainbow Dash using her wing to hug Scootaloo, but we could have had so much more. Now, I'm going to do something a bit unfair here and talk about the My Little Pony fandom. Season 3 aired in late 2012 during the peak of the Brony fandom, when there was an enormous amount of fan art and fanfiction being produced every single day. At the time, I was a teenager with nothing better to do than to spend hours reading fanfics every night after school, and I couldn't help but compare how the show stacked up to what I was reading. One such fanfic I read was titled, How to Preen Your Chicken. In case you don't know, preening refers to the real-life behavior exhibited by birds where they groom their wings, straightening their feathers and using their beaks to pluck out parasites, debris, and broken feathers. Anyways, in this fanfic, Rainbow Dash discovers that Scootaloo doesn't know how to preen herself, because like in all good fanfics, Scootaloo is a neglected, homeless orphan. This story contains an adorable description of Rainbow Dash carefully stepping Scootaloo through the process of preening, as the two of them bond over their mutual need for basic hygiene. It's not going to win any literary awards, but it's a cute little story. However, when I watch season 3 of MLP, I can't help but feel as though preening isn't something that the showrunners would ever think to include at this point. From the way these characters are animated, they don't feel like Pegasi at all. They feel like humans wearing Pegasus skin. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that showrunners had to canonize the idea that Pegasi preen themselves. All I'm saying is that it's the sort of thing that would have gone a long way towards making the world feel more fantastical and alive, the kind of detail that would have fit right in with the vibes of Season 1. Like, there's a scene in Season 1, Episode 20 where Rarity is getting her horn filed at the Ponyville spa, and it's great. Isn't it kind of cool to know that unicorns have to file their horns? Look, I know I've been complaining for most of this video, but I do want to stress that I actually do love this show on the whole. The first 2 seasons of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic are some of my favorite pieces of television ever, and even the later seasons each have their fair share of great episodes, despite the overall downwards trend. I just wanted to make this video because it frustrated me to see so much discourse online debating whether or not the show fell off, and all anyone seems to talk about is the character writing. Believe me, I also think that the show botched nearly all of the major character arcs, but that's been covered in a bunch of videos already. What I wanted to talk about here are the details that tend to get overlooked in these sorts of discussions. The little touches in the animation and world building that made the show feel so alive and vibrant in the first place. What do you think? Did I ruin the later seasons of MLP for you? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm probably going to be publishing at least a few more videos about MLP in the near future, so be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell if you're interested. That's all for now. Herson, signing out.
Being an Earth Pony isn't so bad. We've got magic powers too, like walking around and picking stuff up with our teeth.